There may well, of course, be wandering minds. There could be the occasional wandering, or there could be a torrent of thoughts. There could be our friends, the Five Hindrances. The mind that is wanting something, usually of the pleasant variety. Desire, wanting, craving. Or it might be wanting not. It might be disliking something and wanting it to not be here. It might be restless and agitated, worried. It might be sleepy and dull, sloth and torpor. Or it could be doubt. Doubt, despair, dispiritedness. The opposite of that Goethe quote. These hindrances are the raw material out of which we fabricate, in a way. We transform them into our awakening. And so when they're occurring, awareness illuminates them. And in the moment of their illumination, we are no longer identified with them. They may well repeat, maybe a lot of times. But they become an object of observation rather than our intimate reality. And there's a shift from I am restless, or I am sad, or I don't like this, or I want that. There's a shift into the mind is wanting something, or there is disliking in the mind. The mind is restless. The mind is doubting. And so we use in-breathing and out-breathing as a kind of support system, a railing for guidance to now. And with this nowness, then, everything that the mind does is worthy of observation. In addition to observing the breath and the fine details of the breath, we can include the whole body, all the way from the tips of the toes to the crown of the head. It is all magnificently alive. The clothing touches here and there, a lot of places. There may be pain here and there. There might be pleasure. There likely is warmth and coolness. So there's this whole field of aliveness, which is the body. And within this is the rising and falling of the chest and abdomen. Or perhaps the sensations at the nostrils as breathing in occurs and breathing out occurs. It's also helpful to look at sort of the big picture of the mind. Is this a mind now that is readily concentrated, or is it pretty dispersed? Is it a mind that's preoccupied with wanting something? Or the opposite of that, wanting it not? In our lives, we've experienced expansive consciousness, inclusive consciousness, consciousness in which there's a great deal of love and compassion. Is that what's present now? Or is this more of a contracted mind, concerned with I, me, mine? This is not a question of good and bad. It's a question of the Dharma, of what is the mind like right now? Is this a mind which is readily concentrated, or is it dispersed? And so we bring mindfulness to our practice, we also bring curiosity. What's happening? We can be very clear in our direction and devotion of practice. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. I intend to practice in a formal fashion every day and to maintain mindfulness in all activities to the best of my ability. And I aspire to do this, to accept the reality of this moment and this that I take to be a self with as much love and compassion as possible. So we bring kindness into our practice every time. And of course, we discover pockets, or maybe more than that, of pain, of emotions that are unpleasant. It's true there also is bliss and tranquility and concentration, great pleasures of meditation. Let's intend to be conscious no matter what the color palette of life presents us. And whenever discomfort or pain arises, confusion, depression. Rather than try to avoid it, let us turn toward it. Find it in the body where it exists. And then, when I'm hurting, no matter where, no matter how, I intend to hold myself in sweet compassion. This moment is like this. It couldn't be any other way. It is like this. This next moment may be quite different, or it might be similar. At any time we want to bring our practice into perfect balance, according to Ajahn Chah, simply say, it's like this. May all beings everywhere share in the merits of our practice. As we go through the world today, leaving our wake behind us, may all beings benefit from our presence and compassion and love. And may we maintain our own proper boundaries and take care of our energy so that it can be one of love and compassion and awakening. And as you let your eyes open, please do it wakefully awake. Notice what's happening. And I like to take a minute or two to look from one face to another with no rush. I think the only announcement I'm moved to make this morning is to say that I went to see the Van Gogh museum, not museum, the what do they call it, the display sort of, at the convention center. And if you've not seen it, I really highly recommend it. Quite something. There's about 25 panels with his artwork in the back. And it beautifully written, the story of his life as an artist. And then you go into a large room. It's a big ballroom. And they've got projectors very carefully placed on the ceiling. And they project his art on the walls, but it's vast, it's huge. And then someone did some amazing work. And among these very familiar to me portraits of his face, for instance, and he did a lot of self-portraits, and then they go through and all the pieces of one color come out, and then it's a slightly different color, and then the whole thing transforms into something else. There's one place where one of his very famous paintings is some white, it's orange apple blossoms or something, and one place where all the walls, all the way around the whole room, there might be 150 or 200 people in the room, but there's apple blossoms blowing around the room. It's quite something. Very inspiring. So, what's happening in your world today? Is there anything you want to share?
morning, Robert.
Hi, Janice.
Hi, how are you?
I'm pretty good. A little tired this
Mm.
morning, but functional. And you?
I'm barely functional, but um, I wanted to ask you to clarify for um, uh, my understanding. You talk about the concentrated mind, or is your mind concentrated this morning or spacious? I think is the word you've used.
Dispersed is what I would normally, the
Dispersed.
opposite of
That
concentrated.
Yeah, dispersed. And then so I'm not really sure, you know, the what you mean by that. I mean, I do know the difference between concentrated and dispersed, but then I you'll mention when it's concentrated and it's I, me, which doesn't seem like the direction you want to go. But I don't know. Do I want a concentrated mind or a dispersed mind?
Ah, okay. Very important question. There are really two, this is certainly true in the Theravada tradition. There's really two fundamentally different practices. One is concentration, and the other is vipassana, or insight meditation. And concentration practice is the foundation of a meditation practice. I don't know if it's true now, but I was told long ago that there were still monasteries in Burma where before the novice monks would be taught any kind of broad open awareness vipassana meditation, they would have to learn to chant 1 or 2 volumes of the Pali Canon, which is a monumental task, right? These are chant this book, and it might be 30 or 40 teachings from the Majjhima Nikaya. Anyway, it's a monumental concentration practice, and apparently people used to be able to do this much better than we can now. In the Tibetan world, there's a tremendous amount of concentration practice done on visualizations. That I've had 2 or 3 Tibetan empowerments. One actually was at the Mahabodhi temple in Bodh Gaya, and they go on for hours, and the monk leading it describes, for instance, the Tara empowerment, describes what she's holding in her right hand, and there's a this and there's a that, and then there's there's a lotus that's fully blossomed and one that's very tight and one that's dead, and the colors are like this, and there's this. It goes on for hours of describing this visual object, and then one learns to hold that somehow in mind. In Theravadan practice, there's the most often taught concentration practice is come home to the breath. Stay with the breath. They call it initial application and sustained application. Stay there. And for the period of meditation, no other object is of any importance at all. So if the mind wanders, you don't even really note wandering, you just come back to the breath. You come back to the breath, you come back to the breath. And the idea of this is that it creates some structure and, in a way, direction in the mind. We, of course, have to, if we don't have some concentration, we don't make it in the world. Right? There's the whole ADD issue. So there are other concentration practices that are very traditional in Theravadan Buddhism. There's something called kasina discs. And I've never done much. I did 3 or 4 days once of blue kasina that my teacher recommended for me. And what you do is you make a blue disc, and you make it as perfect as you can, and then you put it against a white background. And then you sit and look at it. From my days of doing this, it's here now, boom, inside. And then you look at it, and you say, blue. And then you close your eyes and you visualize it. And you may visualize easily, but what happens over time is that you get what they call that an internalized image. It's called a nimitta, the sign. So then you can close your eyes and here's this blue disc. Mind wanders back to the blue disc. Mind wanders back to the blue disc. And you then practice making the blue disc small, infinitely small, and then you make it big. And that's what you do all day. That's your practice. And there's a red kasina, yellow kasina, fire kasina. You have a fire and you have a hole cut in in something. And then there's, I forget. And the notion is that the different kasinas are useful for different temperaments. Now, what's this all about? It's all about learning how to develop ekagata, one-pointedness of mind. And I want to leap in another direction for a moment too. When children are born, they don't have an ego, and they're subject to whatever primary process comes through. They go there. I'm happy. It's the beginning of all things wonderful, and it's you took it away, and I hate you, and if I were bigger, I'd kill you. But sometime around age 5. Something that the psychiatric people or the developmental people call the repression barrier arises. And it's possible it begins to be possible for the child to suppress certain emotions and you don't have to act everything out. It's a wonderful thing when one's children get to that. But that's part of the development of the ego. And we develop ego strength with concentration. And contrary to some very misguided people, we're not trying to get rid of the ego. If you succeed in getting rid of the ego, you will be institutionalized. The ego is a structure we need. It's like our heart. We need it to function. So concentration has some very interesting and useful characteristics. Number 1, it suppresses the hindrances. And so if let's say, when this mind gets really wild and out of control, something's happened in life that's challenging, I will sometimes shift to concentration practice specifically. And my intention is to be with the breath, and I will add a mantra. May I be happy. May all beings be happy. May I be happy. May all beings be happy. So I'm using, and I'll also add beads. May I be happy, may all beings be happy, bead. May I be happy, may all beings, breathing in, breathing out, with the mantra, and then bead. And if you think about it, the bead part uses a particular region of the brain, motor function. The speaking uses a certain part of the brain. And being aware of the movement, the kinesthetic movement, uses yet another part of the brain, and we are synchronizing all that firing in a very specific way. Now, of course, this isn't this isn't unique to Buddhism. Some of you will remember, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Hail Mary. When you sit, especially if you're in a group of people, and you do that for an hour, sometimes you get very concentrated. You get wonderful concentration highs. Because it's such a relief to not have the mind thinking and planning and upset and so on. So, it's really useful to develop concentration, but it's not concentration through tension. It's not through, I'm going to concentrate. And it's not concentration through self-judgment if there isn't much concentration. It's a direction, a planting of seeds of this is the way I want to go. Now, concentration, mindfulness, the wings of awakening. We need both. Now, what is this mindfulness business? Please become aware that you're sitting here. Please take one long, slow, deep breath while being aware of it. Let's take another. So, we're sitting in meditation. We have the intention of staying with the breath. But we're not focused on just that. We're willing to see to some degree what else happens. And lo and behold, something else happens. The mind wanders. And mindfulness is the sort of the container that is aware of that, notices that. And so, with mindfulness, we observe the arising and passing away of things. We observe the dukkha nature of things. And with mindfulness, we also are investigating where is this self that I think I am. And so between the two, I remember my teacher Munindra saying, it is like hand washing hand. Concentration and mindfulness are these two incredible capacities of human consciousness. And we develop both. And sometimes there are certain teachers who emphasize concentration, and there are certain teachers who emphasize insight meditation. Not that they both have both, but my teacher Ruth was really very much of a vipassana teacher. She emphasized some concentration, but it wasn't the focus. For instance, there are the high concentration states called the jhanas, and there are teachers who teach the jhanas. Not very many, but there are some. And there's some politics around that there are those who are very adept at the jhanas of becoming very, very concentrated. So concentrated that the outer world falls away, which of course we all do all the time when we fall into trance watching TV or reading a good book. We lose track of the world, but you can do this with doing concentration practice, and then you basically turn the mind on itself and you have it observe itself, and it gets super, 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 super quiet. And the purpose of that is then at some point when one goes to super quiet, and then when you open up to the other sense doors, you've got this laser-like concentration that can really observe, can be used to observe very tiny details of human experience. And then the truth of them is revealed. They are anicca, for instance. So is that making sense in terms of the differentiation? It's a very helpful question because who was I talking to recently? Oh yeah, I remember. Long-time student was frustrated that she just wasn't, her meditation really wasn't being very satisfying to her. And it occurred to her, she remembered somebody, me maybe, talking about concentration. And for about a week, she decided, I'm going to really focus on concentration. And lo and behold, her mind quieted down. And when she would come to meditation, it would be much more comforting because she would go into when we're concentrated, the concentration simplifies things, and the fight flight, the excitation of the sympathetic nervous system that comes from our thoughts. You're thinking about something in the future that's frightening or something in the past that was bad. And we can keep ourselves jazzed up because the mind can't tell the difference between an imagined catastrophe and the real thing. And we can keep ourselves into, and one meets people who have a lot of anxiety and they're always thinking of the bad thing that's going to come. And they have, it leads to illness, and and we all have some of that, of course. So anyway, this woman, did that, and she really got back into her practice. It's like, oh, I'd forgotten. This is why I meditate, because it feels so good. As opposed to sitting, it's still useful to watch everything fly by, but one can, with a little bit of effort and intention, cultivate compassion. Can also do that. Concentration. So, any follow-up question, Janice?
I'm sure there will be. That's a helpful very beginning. I just, I've got a lot to work on, and my mind's been so crazy. I just wanted, to try and get it concentrated so I could, I don't know, just get things under control, I guess, and get back to my practice. But yeah, that is a helpful beginning. I need a lot of work ahead.
Let's not frame it as a lot of work ahead, because concentration, like right now, why don't you pause? I know. We could all do this. Take your hand, and I'm going to make mine visible. Put your hand kind of like this. And now move your fingers up and down, and up and down. I'll bet your mind didn't wander during that. That's perfect concentration. Concentration is always, it's readily here. And we don't need to make it a big job, create some future about it. It's, my intention is I'm going to be concentrated whenever I can. And then in your meditation, mind wanders, and it wanders for 2 minutes or 5 minutes or 30 seconds or whatever, half a second. And then you remember, and then you do initial application, and you're present for a breath or 2 breaths or half a breath. And that's success. And we just build one of those on top of another one, on top of another one.
Good morning, Robert.
Hello, Anna.
I have a follow-up question. From what you say about the ego, it let me intrigue that you say that we need to have ego. I thought it was the opposite, that we don't.
Yeah, well, if we want to be in relationship with people and be able to use a calendar and be places on time and have the capacity to reflect on our emotions and modulate them, those are all ego functions. There's actually, in the Buddhist psychology, there's one ego function that's the problem. They call it Sakya Ditti, and it's called wrong view. And let's try this. Please intentionally take in a slow, long breath. and let it out. Now something happened there, which was there was an expansion of the chest and abdomen, and there was awareness of it. There's an extra little piece that we add on, which is I just breathed in and I just breathed out. And it's the song of the self. It's the I, me, mine, mine. When the mind wanders, it just wanders. There's not someone whose mind is wandering. And so a few weeks ago, I did a whole teaching on bare attention, that our intention is to be present with bare attention, meaning there's just sensations breathing in, sensations breathing out. There's not someone doing it. And that's the problem if we want to call it that. That's where the sense of I, enduring I, comes from. But that's not the ego. That's one little function of ego. One thing that can I say this? True. I think I would say that I have spent my entire adult life strengthening my ego, and simultaneously dissolving the sense of I, me, mine. It is the ego that helps us make decisions, that creates the list of positives and negatives, and then makes the choices. But I would say don't sweat it on the descriptions. Just develop concentration and mindfulness, and it will all fall into place. Hello, James in Florida. Is it cold where you are? looks. Did you lose your power? No. I think it's up on the Panhandle. I think a lot of people lost their power.
I like to sleep with the windows open, and we're having a cold snap. I like the fresh air flowing through. So I would rather put on a hoodie and have fresh air than to be comfortable and rebreathing. Mm-hmm. Thank you for the question.
You're welcome. Well, anybody sitting with something you'd like to share before we sing our way home?
Robert, I would like to share something, if that's okay.
Hi, Dave.
Hi. And this sort of tucks into the conversation that you've been having. I've had some interesting experiences meditating over the last few days. And I was hesitant to say anything because I just knew you were going to come back and tell me I'm thinking too much.
I could just say it now, David, you're thinking too much.
Thank you. We'll get that over with. But many years ago, I can't remember how many, you recorded a guided meditation on big mind practice. And that has been really powerful for me. And one of the things I've been doing lately is really attending to the tingling in the fingers. Start off with that, the tingling in the fingers. And with this latest thing that I'm, the word is a story. So I set aside the tingling and I just sit with the sensation. What is the tingling? And getting very specific and noticing that, well, it's changed, that maybe there's a sensation, a little pinprick sensation here, a little pinprick sensation there, maybe some blood flowing, something. It's just constant change in the fingers. And I just sit and attend to those sensations. And then I'll change my attention to the tongue. And those same sensations are in the tongue and then the feet. And then realize that my body, this form, is enveloped in these constantly changing fluid. It's not static. And then a thought comes in, oh, anicca. And that this body is decaying. The bones that I'm attending to are decaying. And as I sit with this, you use a phrase in your big mind meditation called densification of energy. That as you sit, there's this densification of energy, and out there's a tree that's just densification of energy, and that the experience of this is to come to, I'm not there, but I'm coming to an awareness that this form that I have is not the solid rock body that I've always had. It is a process. It's constantly changing. It's fluid. And that as I sit with these sensations, the brain or the mind also gets wrapped up in that, and the flow of the mind, and that there's just this, it's like the ocean, those videos that you took of the ocean, that this body is simply an ebbing and flowing essence, and that ego is the same thing. As I'm sitting there, as I'm attending to something, the idea of hand starts to appear, but it's in a different spot in this awareness. And, I start to have a sense of, the dependent origination cycle that I'm starting, that was such an obtuse thing when I first heard about it. And I'm starting to, I think, grasp the experience of that. And that, when you talk about the ego, when you talk about the ego, it maybe isn't as, it's a lack of substantiality, I guess. And that as I sit with this flowing, ebbing process, the one thing that is rock solid is awareness. Awareness is the only thing that doesn't vibrate. It's the only thing that doesn't change. It's whatever appears in awareness. And I don't know, I'm in the process, but that's kind of a magical thing that's happening that I think is significant. It feels significant. These childhood fears and thoughts that come up, I can turn to them and they become insubstantial and they go away. I mean, they were there, and then there's this moment of, oh God, that. But even that kind of goes away as I sort of look around at this stuff as an ebbing and flowing process, and that no thing is solid except for awareness. It's a little scary, it's a little exciting. And maybe I'm thinking too much.
One suggestion I would make would be, see if it's true that awareness is rock solid, or does the awareness rise with the sensations themselves?
I did have a moment of that. Yeah. Your arising came up. And the image that came to me was in the class that you were teaching, I guess you still are, on, I think it was on Icha, you showed a bunch of pictures as part of your class. And one of the pictures was this volcanic mountain with a cloud cap on top. Mm-hmm. And I used to fly planes, and so we got into weather and stuff like that. And that cloud cap is called the Lenticular Cloud. And it looks stable. It looks like a thing. But what it is, it's high force winds going over the mountain, and as they rise, the water vapor condenses, becomes cloud, and it gets over, and then it warms as it comes down, and the condensation stops. So it's actually a process. And if you were sitting on the top of the mountain, it would not be a solid thing. It would be wind blowing through and swirling fog. But from a distance, it's like an illusion. Mm-hmm. And the sense that I'm getting from this is that body, self, ego is kind of an illusion.
Yes.
And that it's much more fluid. So anyway, that's just, it's been happening.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
One more comment I would give is that all the years of practice you've done allow there to be presence without being completely blown away by all the events that are happening. So you're able to practice what's called choiceless awareness. And that's a fruit of practice. That's concentration. Concentration stabilizes, and when concentration becomes sort of natural, then we can emphasize concentration less and move into choiceless awareness. Well, I must go. I have an appointment with my son and grandsons this morning. Yeah. So let's sing our way out of here. I invite you to unmute. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam Sadhu Sadhu Sadhu
Sadhu.
Does anyone remember the poem that I shared on Friday? Fern was asking. Oh, we're related to everything, the monarch butterfly.
Frank Lamont.
What? Say again?
I think it was Frank Lamont. I watched the rerun. I wasn't actually there, but
Frank Lamont. Hang on, she did say it was Frank. Let me see. Frank.
Actually, I think it's Fred, Robert.
Fred.
oh,
Just chiming in.
thank you, Tamara.
Oh, my ancestry
like
DNA
here.
results came in. Is that it? Hang on, it's popping up here.
Say that again.
Fred Lamont, much of who I think this was it. More recently, 60,000 BC, I walked on hairy paws across the land bridge.
That's the
Does that
one.
sound right, Fern? Or Fred, yeah.
I just remember the part of the monarch butterfly.
Yeah, okay, that's here. That's in the very beginning. Let me see if I can stick it in the chat. I don't know that it will take it because it's kind of long and they're a bit picky. Copy this, put it to the chat. Oops, I had the chat open already. Send this to everybody. Everyone in meeting. Click. Paste. Nah, it didn't work. So I'm going to go right now and put it in my blog, which is, if you go to robertbeatty.com and then look for blog, give me about 5 minutes and I'll put it up there right now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Crowdsourced information. How do you like that? All right. Bye, dear friends. Please be careful with your masks and avoid this beast that's out there. Okay.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Robert.
Goodbye,
Thank
Dave.
you, Robert. Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Happy
Tamara.
working day.
Have a great day.
Here
Bye,
we go.
Tamara. Bye, Dave.
Prepare for the
Bye,
leap to
Haz.
hyperspace.
Bye, cheers. Bye, all.
All right. So that's good. Thank you, dear friends on Facebook and YouTube.